3, 2, 1. Welcome to the machine. Welcome to the machine. System shut down.
Hi guys, it's Matt here from Siren Craft Brew. Our latest release is a black IPA with Elusive Brewing, who are just across the fence from us. Obviously, with it being Andy, we had to do a black IPA. We have done a few slightly different things to what we normally do at Siren to incorporate how we like to do things. First one being, we use some roasted wheat in the mash. This gives a really nice, delicate roast flavour and aroma in the beer. And we followed it up with our usual heavy-hitting hopping method with Mosaic, Nelson, Amarillo, and Centennial. It's a really big hoppy beer. Like I said, it's got the nice roasted flavours coming through slightly, but yeah, grab a can and enjoy.
Good evening, we are live. Welcome everyone to live tasting with Siren Craft Brew for our new black IPA, Zombies Ate My Neighbours, which of course is a collaboration with Mr. Andy Parker from Elusive Brewing, who's on the chat. So welcome, Andy.
Good evening.
How are we doing? You all right?
All good, thank you. Looking forward to cracking the can.
Good. And we've also got Sean, who is the Siren Craft Brew head brewer. Sean, good evening.
How's it going? I already cracked my can.
You've already cracked one. Super King. And we're also joined by Luke from Yakima Chief Hops, as we're also going to talk about Sold Myself for Simcoe, which was a little bit of a collaboration with Yakima. So, Luke, good evening to you.
Nice one. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, and nice to meet you as well. You were just saying you've been at Yakima for about a year. and so far you haven't actually met many of your colleagues, so this is pretty normal.
Yeah, this is normal office life.
This is normal office life for everyone now, isn't it? Cool. So let's kick off. Let's crack the beer open, and then we can talk more about black IPAs in general. The first thing I actually wanted to comment on was we started with the video there of Matt, our lead brewer, who used the line, we were collaborating with Andy, so we had to brew a black IPA. Andy, can you explain to me why we had to brew a black IPA?
Yeah, it's one of my favourite styles, probably my overall favourite style, and I've been kind of championing the cause to bring this style back because it was really popular when I first got into drinking, big hop forward beers back in 2010-11. Then it kind of fell off a cliff, and a few people were still brewing them, of course, but yeah, mostly it went away. So we've been trying to change that.
What is it about a black IPA for you that is just the absolute be all and end all?
There's a little bit of a nostalgia thing there around an event I went to back in 2011 when it was the launch of Colonel's Black IPA at the Rake in London, and we'd just been to buy Jane's engagement ring and had a lovely afternoon drinking with friends, enjoying that black IPA, and it's a day I remember fondly. And I guess that beer is a lot about the experience and about the moment, and that was always stuck in my mind. But isolating it from that, I do really genuinely love drinking them. I really like interplay between malt and hops, and we'll talk about, I guess, the recipe in more detail. But I like them with a little bit of malt character, not just painting an IPA black, but having a little bit of interplay there. I want to pick it up a little bit on the nose, and I just really enjoy drinking this style of beer. So Matt's right, it had to be black IPA.
Absolutely. You are obviously, if anyone's following you on Twitter, and if you're not, then get onto Twitter and follow Andy and Elusive. There's the hashtag Bipper Comeback, which I think it even now has Twitter accounts to itself and Instagram accounts to itself. I don't know if that's you running them, by the way.
No, it's taken on its own little life, which is great.
Sean, so what's your opinion on a black IPA? You were obviously happy to go ahead with the black IPA.
Yeah, so we had slightly different views, and I think we discussed this on the brew day. I think we even might have released something early on where I have this completely made up my own view of black IPA. For me, I like to try and make an IPA that's dark but with no roast character. So if you blindfold, it will taste like an IPA. And then I consider Cascadian Dark Ale to be more where you got roast and hops and malt character. And Andy saw that somewhere and I think called us out straight away on it. Where's your facts? Where's this from? So that's completely my own opinion.
Okay, so
we're normally just trying to troll Tim on Twitter, basically.
Yeah.
The last thing we did was Let the Night In Black IPA, and that was a huge fruity character from it was a hoppy number. If you were blindfolded, as you say, you wouldn't know it was dark in colour. The Cascadian Dark Ale we did together and apart, that had that roasty sort of notes, and for me that was the defining difference. Andy, you don't agree with that? You think a black IPA should be more malty, more roasty?
Well, I think it's just like any style. It's got it's a broad church, and there's different. I mean, I think some of my favourite, couple of my favourite black IPAs. You've got Stone, Sublimely Self-Righteous, and Firestone Walker, Wiki Jack. Wiki Jack is definitely a little bit roasty for sure. It uses rye. There's a lot of malt character in that beer. Sublime Self-Righteous, again, a little bit of roast there. So I'm not like, there's like anything. There's no like, this is the black IPA. This is it. This is the recipe. This is what you must brew. It's like it's a broad thing, and brewers have interpreted that. And the whole like Cascadian Dark Ale versus black IPA thing, it's kind of the one and the same thing. It's trying to put a name on something that's more descriptive than black IPA.
Yeah.
But it's not like a defining. There's not one defined take on style.
Okay, so a couple of comments initially, and I noticed this when I was checking Untapped earlier, and someone said it's almost a bit sort of porter-esque as an IPA. So firstly, this comment, Andy, nicest man in brewing. which we're going to put up because there's a cat in it, so that's fine. Comment here from Graham, and if you are on Twitter or indeed, sorry, not Twitter. If you are on Facebook or indeed YouTube, do get your comments in because we are going to be trying to answer these. So Graham says, tastes like a stout. What is the difference between a Bipper versus stout in the panel's view? Sean?
Yeah. I think like black IPA, you're looking, like I said, I've always approached it to try to create an IPA with a darker color. But what I wanted to say when Andy was talking there as well is that the interesting thing is when you look at comments on review sites and stuff for black IPA, you always get some people going, oh, there's too much roast in this, and some people going, there's not enough roast. So I think what I like about the style is it's like you got different views and different people like it in different ways. So it's you're never gonna please everyone with a black IPA, but you're gonna start a conversation, which I think is good.
That's the key thing to beer, I think, is starting a conversation and everyone having a different opinion.
But with stout and black IPA, I think we're focusing on the hops with the black IPA and the balance between the malt and the hops. And so what was great about this is I brewed quite a few black IPAs as a brewer, and this was a completely different approach to it that I have taken, which I really enjoyed. And the big thing that Andy discussed with me was about the balance between the malt and the hops and the drinkability. Mm-hmm. So it's having hop character there more than you would in a stout. I'm saying a stout focuses more on the roast and the kind of malt and chocolate and coffee kind of characters.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add, Andy?
Yeah, so funnily enough, we've got an export India stout in tank at the moment, which has taken, a classic base stout recipe with all that roasted barley, the chocolate, that kind of full-on roast, and trying to take that in a slightly different direction. But in terms of how you approach brewing a stout versus a black IPA, even if you take the hops away, pretty different. I think much more roast in a stout. And what we've got here is a little bit of roast coming in from the roasted wheat that we mashed with, and then we splash through a little bit of chocolate in this case to hold the colour, which also adds a slight flavour as well. So, but a stout you'd expect a lot more of a kind of a roasty assault on the palate.
Yeah. I think I was just going to say, what on the nose, it is really roasted in the nose. The hops definitely come through as well. You get that real fruitiness.
Yeah, I think if you just kind of pick the glass up and smell it, you get that roast. But if you give it that swirl, it kind of unlocks the hop.
It does, yeah.
And then that pops over the top of the malt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Just sort of straight out, you get a bit more of a roastiness. Letting that release, that fruit really comes over it. So, Luke, what's your opinion on the black IPA? Are you a fan in style, or do you think it's a good vehicle for hops?
So I tend to agree with Sean on black IPAs for the most part. I like that kind of that purity of hops with the color in there. But then Andy mentions Wookie Jack, and it's like one of my favorite all-time beers, and it couldn't be further away from that. Like the spicy rye, and it's so roasty in there as well. I think it's one of them things, like people talking about stouts, you've got that kind of, it can go with that American stout like Andy's talking about. He's got an export India stout. It's finding the right hops to go with that roast as well. And like some of the big classic American sea hops, they work really, really well with a bit of dark malt in there as well. I find like Centennial and stuff like that, especially Cascade, Chinook, these kind of vibes. You can get some really nice kind of blackcurranty vibes coming out where you would sometimes get grapefruit, and like it's a really nice kind of, it's a play on flavors, I think. And I think Andy's been obviously championing the style to come back, because it's something that's been missing a little bit for the last like 3 or 4 years. It's something that certainly when I was like really getting into beer heavily, it was kind of starting to come up, and it was like, hey, this is the new big exciting style. And And yeah, it's a nice bit of nostalgia to see him back again, to be honest.
I think nostalgia is the key as well, isn't it? With obviously Elusive Brewing's kind of 8-bit can style and obviously branding. That was the nice thing. So we've got who actually designed the can artwork. Now, luckily, with Andy, obviously your 8-bit style, we were given sort of grace to use our designer, Will Parr from Studio Parr, who put together this can design based on the game Zombies Ate My Neighbours. And our marketing manager, Andy, used to play that a lot. And that right there is our marketing manager, Andy, being chased. And
there's so many little Easter eggs on this. I love it.
There is. And right there is my dog, Dolly, who you may have seen in photos. I think she's actually got a little poo next to her, which is quite funny. But Andy, were you a fan of the artwork?
Yeah, I really liked it, and I think it's I mean, I talked about this collab being like a collaboration in many senses, and the artwork is definitely one of them.
Yeah,
big fan of what Will did with it, and I believe he hand drew it all. Really clever. The other thing that if you've got a can there and you're watching, it's really tactile. Like the siren, it's got like a bumpy logo embossed kind of thing. And I don't think you've done that on your labels before, have you? I mean, that's really nice.
Yeah, we have done a few. Yeah, although that one does really stand out white. That's true. All right, so let's talk more about the actual beer itself and the collab. So, Sean and Andy, who's best here to sort of give us a bit of background into the recipe and what went into this beer and made it what it is?
Well, I think one of the great things that we had with this is we're both on the same industrial estate, so our water was pretty much the same, so we could work with that. And that was something that Andy kind of talked about with me in the beginning, is getting the water right to help. Not when you put some roast grains, you can get astringent flavors and roast flavors coming through that. We wanted to make sure we avoided, but keeping the nice, good flavors in there. So focus on that. Roast sweet was something that I haven't used, so that was really fun to play around with and interesting. I've got some ideas to use that in other beers down the line. And then we used a little bit of chocolate plate on the sparge to kind of get color and a bit of flavor coming through, like Andy said earlier. So that was pretty much kind of the beginning that we approached it with. And then we looked at hops, and we wanted to lay in quite a few different hops. I think the first hop we agreed on, which we both kind of was our first preference, was Amarillo, with kind of the orange flavors that you can get from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put some Nelson in, Mosaic, Centennial, and we also got some Vic Secret that we put in on the hot side, just to create another kind of layer of flavor.
Now you've said orange, I really get that orange coming through as well.
So we also, after the dry hop, I got Andy to come over and taste. That was one of the other cool things about just being able to pop over and taste it in tank. And we really got like a chocolate orange thing just straight after the first dry hop, where the flavors are still warm and still kind of blending with each other. So
it's pretty rare at the moment to have a collab in person at all. A lot of collabs at the moment are sort of email collabs, let alone a collab where you can actually come back and taste the beer and how it's sort of following up. Some of you might have seen the collab photo day where we're all outside wearing masks. It was a pretty strange thing.
Yeah. Do you have any comments on the recipe, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that collaboration in many senses, and I think the hopping is very much it's hopped like a siren beer. It's kind of taken as a base very similar to our Shadow of the Beast, which is our kind of core occasional black IPA, with some tweaks, different crystal malt and so on, and then kind of taking Siren's approach to hopping, and layering that flavour in. When we brew Shadow of the Beast, we use 3 different hops. This has got 5. Laying that flavour in and trying to pick out certain characteristics you want. I mean, Luke mentioned blackcurrant and blackberry, things like that. You can really, when you start to use certain hops alongside the malt, you can kind of take things in a different direction. I think you need to, when you're brewing a black IPA, kind of take that into account. Like some of your classic West Coast IPA hops like Columbus don't particularly work that well in my view here, because that kind of resin character can conflict. You kind of want to push that kind of fruity citrus vibe and lay that against the character of the malt and try and take it in a different direction that way.
Yeah, it's a very balanced beer, and I'd love that sort of, Sean, the ones that you brewed in the past that were more like a really fruity tropical IPA. I genuinely really like this sort of roasty nature to it, and I didn't think I would be, because I'm a big fan of the sort of more tropical IPA. But it plays tricks with you, and as you guys are talking, Sean, you mentioned orange, Andy, you mentioned the blackcurrant vibe, and I'm kind of sipping it going, oh yeah, I'm getting that now. Yeah, I'm getting that now, and I'm being totally influenced by you guys. You're complete influences.
And I mean, Sean was saying about it was quite fun. Obviously physically very, very close, and being able to wander around and taste it from tank and so on. And we brewed this beer on New Year's Eve, and you put the picture on Twitter, Tim, but quite a nice symmetry there. And our first ever collab with Siren was New Year's Eve 6 years ago, which was off the back of the homebrew competition.
Yes.
I didn't win. I was kind of runner-up, and ended up Ryan invited me down to brew a beer, and at that time we were talking about launching Elusive, and Darren agreed to let us co-brand it. So that was dinner for one, and became a series. So this was brewed on the same day. I think it's 6 years. 6 years later. It was pretty cool as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I think like another thing to add into this for Andy's, like the difference is using our house yeast, which is a Vermont strain. You normally wouldn't use a Vermont strain probably when you're doing a black IPA. I'm not sure if that's what you do, but yeah.
Yeah, probably go like California Ale.
Yeah, so, and our yeast does add some fruit characters as well to it. So yeah, it's not as kind of clean as some of the kind of West Coast yeast that you'd use. So that was kind of a different direction to Andy's normal black IPAs. One thing I noticed recently is there seems like there are quite a few other breweries brewing black IPAs at the moment, which, I looked around the other day and saw there are quite a few out at the moment. So, yeah, I think your comeback's working, Andy.
It's a bit of comeback. It's
on. It's on.
So, well, sort of when we're drinking IPAs and sort of fresh IPAs, we always want to drink them soon because obviously hops die out. Is there a difference with a Bipper, like because of the roasty nature of it? Is it something that you could age a little bit longer, or are you looking for the real freshness of those hops again?
I think from my point of view, obviously the hops aren't the only part of the beer. So you might think it would change slightly over time and the hops might drop back slightly, but it's not the sole component of the beer. Obviously for an IPA, you drink fresh, but you'd probably still want to drink this fairly fresh, but you might find if you drink this in 3 months' time, there's still lots going on and you'd really enjoy it. And maybe it would the malts would come to the fore slightly more than they are now.
That's awesome. So again, whoever's watching on YouTube and Facebook, make sure you get your questions in. Here is one. How much Nelson did you use? Can definitely taste that. Good palate you're picking out.
So we put in 15 kilos dry hop, which came to about 3 grams per liter. So it wasn't. Look, we put a lot of different hops in, so it was a small amount. But I find when I use Nelson, like a little bit goes a long way. Nelson can sometimes tend to have that diesel-y kind of thing that if you put too much in my opinion. So I like to use Nelson in lower rates than I would say Citra or Simcoe.
So there's another question here, Sean, and this was something we were talking about before we kicked off. Is there a nitro version in the pipeline? So a nitro black IPA?
There's always potential. Yeah, we did talk about it actually at the beginning of this. We just packaged our Shattered Dream, which is our big version of Broken Dream on nitro. So we like, but we're getting very comfortable with using the nitro doser now. So we're gonna start playing around with different styles.
If we're talking about that, you poured some in the office earlier, Sean, and I think it took about 2 minutes for that big cascade. Every time you knock the glass, all right, so,
yeah, it's a big, thick one.
Adrian asked, definitely not straight out of the fridge. Any recommended serving temperature from the brewers?
I think for this one I would go fairly cold with it. I mean, yeah, you may be interested if you're watching now, like, you know, try it in 20 minutes and see what you think as it warms slightly. Mine is out the back of the van temperature, about -3. But yeah, it's I think black IPA, you know, you do serve it as an IPA and not kind of as you might a stout or a porter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always preferred a colder IPA, but they're definitely, you are going to get more of those roasty flavors, I think, as that temperature comes up. And probably what
yeah, it's interesting. I Shadow the Beast we do on cask and keg.
Yeah,
and it presents two very different beers. I mean, when you have it slightly warmer, I found that you get more of that malt coming forward, and it's more rounded. When it's colder, obviously the hops pop a little bit more on the nose, and I tend to find that they do present quite differently on cask and keg. So it's an interesting style to try at different temperatures, and it ultimately comes down to personal preference.
Here we go. Nitro Bipper is a cracking idea. Never seen a nitro Bipper, would be interesting. So we're getting some good points on the nitro, which is nice to see. Here we go. Seeing everyone made a sip of this fridge, make it a refill. That's all we're here for. All right, so let's talk about food pairings. It's something I always want to talk about with a beer. I think it's a different beer. It's not, it's not a dark beer. It's stout. It's not the IPA. Sean, you're really buzzing right now. I'm going to mute you. I'm just going to mute you while you're not. What would you pair with a Bipper, Andy? I think you're best to talk about this because you drink the most Bippers. But what would you pair food-wise?
That is a really interesting one. It could probably work with a lot of different things. I mean, even like I had like fish and chips for dinner. Perfect. I mean, it's. I guess it's not going to be a great one at cutting through fat, like a lager or a session pale might. It's got more to it. More. So you probably don't want it with a super intense food. It might be fun to try and find a cheese that would work well with a black IPA. I was thinking something like something quite nutty or something along those lines.
We've been doing a lot of cheese pairing because we've got our Valentine's cheese pairing tomorrow night. And the most surprising thing for me ever was blue cheese and Broken Dream breakfast stout. And as soon as that was recommended, I was like, blue cheese and stout, no way. Unreal. It's one of the best beer and cheese pairings I've ever had. And I think this would really work with the blue cheese.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So let's get Sean. Sean, your opinion on that? Anything you would recommend?
I was going to say cheese as well. Yeah, I think good strong cheese would go well with this.
If there's that cheese won't pair with, you let me know. Luke, what about yourself? Are you pairing food with anything, or what would you want to see with this?
So, definitely, like Andy's talking about something like a mature nutty cheese, like a vintage Gouda or something like that would probably be incredible. But to be honest, you've got the opportunity to have something pretty hearty with a beer like this as well. Like throw that near a shepherd's pie and you'd probably be pretty happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Like a hearty chili or something like that as well. I think that would really work. All right, we're going to take one more question, which is, what are the best black IPAs Andy and Sean have tried other than Zombies? Personally, I love one called Imperial Black by Buxton. I got hold of a year or so ago. So, Andy, you've mentioned a couple, but what are your favourites?
Oh, I get back to that first time I tried Colonel Black IPA. It's still well worth looking that beer out if it's released maybe yearly. That's really nice, and it is for me a little bit on the roasty side as well, which I like. I think the absolute, my absolute favourite has got to be Wookie Jack by Firestone Walker. Interestingly, they just re-released it last month. I think it was like a tap room only release. So if you got any friends over in California, get them to buy you some and get it sent over, or go and when we're allowed to go and try it. That's a really good black IPA. But you mentioned the Buxton Imperial Black, very nice. James Kemp, who I think designed that recipe, was brewing some of the first black IPAs in the country. He was at Buxton and went on to other breweries with black IPAs at Marble and so on. Really, really good brewer and someone who's absolutely nailed the style. So anything by James is going to be good. Imperial Black. They also did a Black Rocks, which was like the 5 or 6% version, non-imperial, which is great.
Nice. You mentioning Firestone Walker doesn't surprise me because I remember from Beavertown's last festival when you were sat next to Firestone Walker on your stands, and the look on your face, you were absolutely fanboying all day long.
Well, yeah, like they put the stands in alphabetical order, and God bless the alphabet, like E and F, like that. And it was quite. Matt Brynelson's a head brewer at Firestone Walker. Absolutely amazing brewer, and a really nice guy as well, as it turns out. So it was a good day.
Good times. Sean, what's your favourite black IPA?
I'd have to say it's just come up in the comments. The ones from Colonel that I've had been great, but I also haven't managed to have as many as I'd like to, and that's one of the reasons why Andy started the black IPA comeback. So I've brewed a few in my time, and it's a style that I really like, but I don't actually see it often.
It's not as popular as it should be. It's not as popular as it should be, and that's why we've got Andy working diligently to bring #Bipper comeback, quite frankly. All right, this comment, and then we're going to move on to the next beer, which is Sold Myself Simcoe. And I'm fairly sure everyone's got cats that they can bring on cameras here. Unfortunately, Dolly's not with me tonight, but there she is on the label of the beer. All right, so next up, we're going to be drinking Sold My Soul for Simcoe. If you want to get hold of it, by the way, if you haven't had it so far, head to sirencraftbrew.com. Get 10% off. And I recommend going to try it. You can go to sirencraftbrew.com/zombies to go straight there, or .com. You'll find yourself in the shop. This beer is the second. There's a cat on camera. That's perfect. Previously, we did Sold Myself for Citra. Now we're doing a Simcoe. And this is a beer where we're highlighting hops. So, Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with this series of beers while we pour them?
So the original one, like you said, was Sold Myself for Citra. And the idea originally was using 3 different hop products. And then we managed to get 4 hop products for Sold for Citra, which ended up being one of the reasons we called it Sold Myself for Citra. And that turned out great. So we had the opportunity to do one for Simcoe, and so reached out to Yakima Chief for some help to see what Simcoe we could get, and it was just after the harvest. We normally only get our hops kind of within the new year, and they helped us out and sent us some of the fresh Simcoe crop. So we used T90 pellets, which are pellets that we use for dry hopping, or we use T90 pellets in our thing. And then they've got a product called Cryo Hops, which is, I'll describe it as more intense kind of hop. There's the way they process it at a colder temperature, so you keep a lot of the aroma in there. So the idea then became we'll use our existing crop plus the new crop, and we'll blend the two of them, because each year we move into a new crop of all our hop varieties. And so it was probably the freshest hops we've used, with them getting it over to us. And yeah, I'm really happy with this beer. The Simcoe's come through really, really nicely. And we don't often do a single hop beer, completely single hop, when we do our suspended series. We have a few other hops in there to back it up, but the main hop will highlight it. This is just Simcoe, and it just is, I think it's a really good showcase of Simcoe. Some grapefruit, some resin, tropical notes as well. It's just, I was really happy with this. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what Luke thinks.
As soon as you open it, I mean, the whole room is. I when I first photoed this, I photographed it outside, and even outside, it was like the beer was 5 feet away from me. I could smell it. It's so much aroma. It's incredible. Luke, what's your thoughts on this beer?
I absolutely love it, to be honest. And like a few of the other guys around YPH have had it as well, and the consensus is like it's a really, really good beer. It's like Simcoe's a massive, massive favorite of mine from way, way, way into my early days, like just kind of getting into beer.
Yeah.
The taste of Simcoe is one of them things that really clicked for me with craft beer early on, and just been a massive, like unashamed Simcoe fanboy right the way through. So like when Sean came to us with this idea, it's just like, yeah, you absolutely have to do that. And like, I think you guys have showcased the fresh crop Simcoe so well as well. It's super, super tropical, loads of passion fruit and grapefruit, and yeah, that kind of pine resin in there as well. Yeah, I just think it's awesome, and it's just so much aroma coming out of it as well.
Yeah, I think the passion fruit really comes through, like you said. In South Africa, we call passion fruit granadilla. I don't know why. That's what I've normally called it, and I just get a big memory of that. Like when I smell it now, it's great.
It's as I think you've both touched on that, but Simcoe is a real sort of darling of the craft. I'm not sure how many real super hop nerds there are out there who can pick out, sort of drink a beer and say there's something in this. I've seen, Andy, you've tweeted things like that where it's like you've tried a beer and you've gone, oh, there must be so-and-so in that. I'm always impressed by that when people can do that. But I think the average sort of craft beer drinker, probably more like myself, won't be able to drink a beer and go, oh, there's something in that. You might be able to recognize a bit more, but Simcoe is a real standout hop for me. And I think it is one that you can always recognize, and it is really well, portrayed here. What else is going on in the recipe then, Sean? Going on.
Sorry, I was muted. So we got quite a bit of flaked oats and malted oats in this, and then use some dextrin to leave some body in the beer, and then just big dry hops on this. We dry hop at the end of fermentation, dry hop, and then 2 other big dry hops. Also put quite a bit in the whirlpool. Don't put any hops in for bittering, which I think has worked quite nicely. It's also 7.2%. So good strength on it.
Amen. I think that's about what you want from a beer like this, isn't it? I don't think that tastes like a 7.2% beer.
Not at all.
But I think that strength sort of brings with it flavour. and it's just a huge punch. But you could literally sit and drink pint after pint of that. You might be in trouble after a few hours, but you really could. Andy,
yeah, I think you're right. Like that little bit of that ABV on it adds a bit of weight to the beer as well, which I think it balances it out really, really nicely.
Yeah, I think you need it. I mean, when we've done suspended in Simcoe, 4%, full of flavour, and I love that beer. I drink so much suspended, but this just adds that sort of depth of flavour, that that little extra edge. Yeah, I love it. Andy, what's your thoughts? Hang on, you are muted. Let's unmute you.
Okay. I really when it's quite funny. I've got the advantage of working opposite Siren is that when the new beers come out, I get my order in and I'm normally the first one. And I got brought this across the car park and we opened it straight away. We were in at the time, and like you were saying, Tim, when you cracked the can and you could smell it across the even outside. It was the same. We opened it, poured it out, and I think genuinely it's one of the best IPAs you guys have done for a while. Really, really, it just pops. Everything came together. I did like the Citra one, but for me, the Simcoe hop just sings in this style. And for me, that's really surprising because you tend to associate this style of beer more with the juicy, your Citras, your Galaxies, all those kind of more kind of pure, juicy, fruity hops. Whereas Simcoe has got, as I've learned through this beer, it's got a lot of those flavors there, and they really combined with the yeast and that kind of creamy body. It just all kind of comes together really well in the glass. And yeah, it surprised me. It genuinely surprised me. I wouldn't. You talked about picking hops out. If you'd said to me, Andy, what hops are in this, I probably wouldn't have guessed that it was a single hop Simcoe. You think there's a lot more depth to the beer and lots more going on than you would typically associate with it.
Luke,
Oh, sorry. Well, I just wanted to comment something on there. So first of all, I think the interesting thing with this beer is the depth of flavor that the Simcoe's given. In the taste and aroma, it's just there's a lot going on. But what Andy was saying with Simcoe, something I found with Simcoe is, and Luke, maybe you can touch in on this. Simcoe is a hop that I've heard a lot about when it gets harvested. The time that it's got a harvest window, and if it's harvested early in that window, it can be, I think, more on the grapefruit side, and towards later, it can be on the resin side. And so I think Simcoe is one of the hops that really drives people to go to hop selection and get out and select hops. And that's why I think what we got here, I think it's like Andy said, I wouldn't have picked it out as just a single Simcoe. But I think it's just worked really, really well. But yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that for Simcoe, because there's quite a big story. Zoltan, your colleague, sent me an email and he talked about, I think it's 20 years old now or something, Simcoe, or 10 years old.
No, it's coming up to 21. So
yeah,
it's that easy thing to forget of how long Simcoe's been around. So Simcoe was first released commercially in 2000 as well. So it's seen a couple of big IPA booms, and it's been quite, it's quintessential to a couple of them as well. And it's one of the things that I love about it is that it has this kind of great foundation level. It's a dual purpose hop as well, so you can use it at every single stage. You can use it to make super bitter, super piney beers, or you can make really, really tropical, juicy beers like this as well. And like Sean said, it's you've got to get the harvesting exactly right on it, just to get it kind of perfect how kind of our farmers like to grow and like to harvest as well. I mean, it was bred by one of the owners of YCH, a guy called Jason Perrault, who's the head of our hop breeding, kind of our sister business basically. And it's 20 years into the market, and it was probably first bred 10, 15 years before that as well. So if you think he's working on this flavor profile in the early 90s really to get there, it shows kind of just how long it's been around, kind of how influential it's been with IPAs, really.
Yeah, it's an amazing hop, and it's standing the test of time. And is it as a hop man, Luke, is Simcoe one of the biggest sellers, if you will, to brewers? Or
yeah, so for us, it's like we refer to it as one of the big three. So it's Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic are like the big kind of powerhouse hops. It's like we've seen, like, over the last 5-6 years, there's been kind of a decline in the super high alpha bitter hops. And like you said, it's that kind of the change in trends towards the soft, juicy, citrus, tropical. But Simcoe's been that one constant right the way through, and it's always been really high up there on the how much we plant, how much we harvest, and of course how much we sell, because it is, there's enough people like me that will buy a beer because it says Simcoe on it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Sean, question for you here from a young viewer called Siren Craft Brew, who says, for Sean, any thoughts on the contribution of Vermont yeast to this? That's our marketing.
Yeah, our yeast can add some nice tropical peach kind of aromas, and yeah, I think it comes doing this quite nicely. It's quite clean for so we've got to have a clean beer for the Simcoe to shine in. It probably contributes the kind of some of the tropical notes in there. Our yeast kind of we've had it going now for quite a few years. Since we started, I think we got the Vermont strain in, and we've got it as our own house culture now. So we use it generally in all our beers.
I was thinking about food pairings, and I was sort of going over in my head, and it's been a while since I've sort of paired beer with food, but I just really want to eat a salad at the same time as this. Is that weird? And I think it would really bounce off each other, just like the lightness of a salad with the sort of freshness of this beer. But I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on that as well. Let's go with you, Luke.
So purely based on, all fairness, I've drunk quite a lot of this beer this week. Yeah. This is not my first can, and I made some burritos on Wednesday and had a can of this, and absolutely incredible. It is kind of that freshness thing. It picks up on the lime and the guacamole and stuff like that went in with it as well. Yeah, having something nice and kind of zingy to pick up really brings up how tropical this beer is.
As a hop man, do you find that sort of, are you looking for certain hops and beers to sort of, pair with certain foods, like you mentioned with the sort of limeness and the zinginess? Is that a thing that you think about?
It's a thing that I think about quite a lot. I mean, like before I worked in beer, I worked in the wine industry and trained up to do sommelier as well. So a lot of where my mind instinctively goes is, what would I put this with? And so, it's almost always the first thing that I think of when I crack a beer. It's like, okay, what's this going to go well with?
Mm. Sean, what about for you? What's your sort of go-to food pairing with an IPA?
Normally you want something to kind of cut through the hops, but I think with this, the thing I want to have with it is a Solero ice cream. It just tastes like it, and I think it would go really well. So that's what I'm going to go with tonight.
20 years, that's amazing. But I completely get that. That's great. What about you, Andy? Hang on, you're muted.
I was thinking
there we go.
More a little bit to Luke's point around around burrito, but like a chorizo or paella or something like that. salmon is quite a chewy, full-on dish. I think this would help cut through that, and the flavors might work well together. So yeah, like maybe a spicy meat or something like that might be fun there with it.
Last question I'm going to ask on hops is, Luke, about the sort of the fresh Simcoe that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that brings a real different vibe to it?
Yeah, I mean, so the fresh harvest Simcoe that's coming into the market now, like, it's incredible. It's really, really incredible. And managing to get it into a beer this early and as fresh as it is, kind of from the fields and into the pelleting plant and directly over, really, it really, really shines through. And it's it just has that smell of the pure hops as well. And kind of part of that, like Sean tipped on earlier, is the use of cryo hops as well. Like, it's such an intense flavor profile that we get with cryo hops. It's like removing the leaf matter and leaving the pure lupulin, doing it all in sub-zero temperatures. No oxygen comes anywhere near it, and it pops. And that's like, I think that's the key to it, really. And when you've got something that's that intense as a product and you get it this fresh, like, you get a beer like this. Certainly, well, when you put it in the hands of a really good brewer anyway, you get a beer that's good.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. In the hands of a good brewer. And Sean, I hate to say it, but you're a good brewer, my friend. You've done a good job. All right, so there's one last question here on hops and this beer, and then we're going to move on just to introduce a couple of the new releases today. And that is, what's the newest fad hop strain this year? Sabro?
So that's an interesting one. I mean, for me, one of the most exciting hop varieties at the moment is it's called Idaho 7. Unsurprisingly, it's brewed in Idaho. There's a guy called Nate Jackson bred this hop, and it's incredible. It's super, super, super tropical. Loads of like really ripe mango in there as well. Like, it ticks all of the big juicy IPA hop vibes, but it's got this crazy kind of florality to it as well. Like, I think it's absolutely beautiful, and more people are starting to pick up on it now. Like, it's not really been in the market for that long, but it's incredible. It's a real favorite of mine anyway.
Sean, Idaho 7?
Yeah, I think, like, Talus, we got to play around with the Yakima Chief, which was in near normal. I see someone commented on in the comments. It's interesting, like, the first time I tried a beer with Sauber, and that's all I got. I thought it was quite strange and intense, and then the more I've used it and I've drunk beers with it, the more I get to like it. And Talus, I think, is like the next step on for Sauber, where I think it's a bit more rounded. And yeah, I think playing around with that, I was really happy with Neo Normal. Yeah, we've got some Idaho 7 and Strata in recently, which are other hops that we kind of only got a little bit of that we're playing around with that have been great. And I'm really keen to see what we can do with Simcoe after this beer. So,
Not to give away any brewing secrets, but anything coming up?
Oh, was that me? Sorry, I thought you were talking to Andy that time. Yeah, we got a few little IPAs coming. We're going to do a lot of work on our IPAs this next year, so keep your eyes out for those.
He's holding his glass close to his chest. We've got a couple of mentions about Neo Normal. So I'm not going to say anything about Neo Normal apart from keep your eyes on what we're doing. There might be some more. That was a lovely bit. All right, so we've got some good answers for favorite hops here. Strata, Sabro, absolutely all of them, loving it. One of my favorite comments here is I can't even find it now. Damn it. Never mind. That was going to be a good comment to link this. But I want to go on to one of our beers that was released today, which is Pastel Pills, Italian lager. You guys should have one with you there as well. If you're drinking along at home, unless you've been to the tap yard today, you probably don't have one of these. That's fine. We're just going to touch on it quickly and tell you a little bit about it. Now, I'm going to tell you as a photographer, I first met this beer yesterday, which was when it was canned, fresh. And I took photos of it at about 11:15 in the morning. And about 5 minutes later, it was gone because it's just so glorious. I just had to drink it. Sean, tell us a little bit about Pastel Pills.
So I think the comment you might have been looking for was the one about Heart of Ice.
That's it.
Yeah, I saw that come up as well. I think one of the few good things out of lockdown and stuff like that is it's given us time to lager some beers and play around with lagers. We've done a few of those last year, and we've always wanted to do Italian pils, and that's kind of something we're looking forward to doing in summer. And we just thought, why not do it now? Get some. So I've done quite a bit of research on it. I saw a comment about Tipo pils as well, and yeah, it's definitely influenced from Tipo pils. I was lucky enough to go over to Italy a few years ago and work at a beer event, and the guys who brew Tipo pils were there, and I tasted it, and I was just like, wow, this is incredible. So yes, it is an influence. The Italian Pilsner style is quite an interesting one. I think the original inspiration was actually British cask beer and German lager, like blended together, and he got the dry hop idea from what he saw the traditional English breweries putting pellets into casks. So yeah, we use all German hops in this, and that's one of the kind of key things with Italian lagers, not to go big or create an IPL or anything. It's subtle, very low dry hop rates. I think we were at like under 3 grams per liter. I think that's on the high end on Italian pils. Get a bit of Cara Munich in with the lager malt, a little bit of Cara pils as well. So get a little bit of hop character, malt character in there. It's got a nice golden color. I'm really happy with the color. Yeah, and it's just balanced, drinkable, crushable, as some of the kids would say.
It's a bit of a cliche, but as soon as I drank it, it literally whisked me away to an Italian piazza. I was just sat there in the sun. It reminded me of a holiday where you just sort of say, waiter comes up, oh, what do you want? You go, I don't know, beer. And they just bring you a beer, whatever it is, because there's a language barrier. And you just go, oh, this is great because it's in the sun. It reminded me of that. And I love it. Andy, you a lager fan?
Yeah, I think if I think back to lockdown V1, it was the summer of sat in the garden drinking lager. And, I've just, first time I tried this, and I just want to be sat in a pub garden in the sun, drinking this. And you get, it's 5.5, you get 3 or 4 pints in, you'd be feeling quite hazy and, and just loving life. And take me there, please.
What about yourself, Luke?
Well, first off, I think it's great, to be honest. Like very, very strong Tipo pils vibes. Like Andy's saying, there's very little I want to drink more on a hot day than a really crisp lager. And yeah, it ticks a lot of boxes. This is my kind of lager.
Amen. All right. Well, we're not going to dwell too much on these, but we're going to move on to our other release today, because we don't do things by halves. we've also released a rhythm recipe, which is a hazy IPA. And we're going to open that and drink a bit. Guys, Andy, Luke, you don't need to nail these down.
I'm now like down in. Should have brought more than one glass.
This is again like that's a beer that I've just poured out and I'm holding up on the camera. I can smell it. That's unreal. Sean, tell me a little bit about.
So I read an article recently about a process called hop dipping, which some breweries that don't have a whirlpool have used, where they, because they don't have a whirlpool, so they can't do a hop step after the kettle. They make a hop tea in the fermenter, and then bring the wort in before fermentation. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, but I wanted to do it after fermentation. Fermentation is quite vigorous and can vent off flavors and aromas that are quite volatile. So we did the same thing. We made a hop tea in our fermenter. I used citrus, Simcoe, and Mosaic, and let it sit stew for about an hour, and then we put the wort in, or the actually finished beer in there after fermentation, and then we've done a dry hop on top of that, and it's come out really interesting. Like you get a lot of the aromas that you'd get in the pellets. I think quite green, quite dank, and then the tropical fruit kind of comes through behind that. We did dry hop it with the same hops later on, which were citrus, Simcoe, and Mosaic, because I kind of know what those will do. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear Andy and Luke's opinion on it. It's something that I find quite interesting.
I'll get Andy's opinion, but just shortly after we hear a little bit more from an expert in the situation, from Sean Knight from Siren Craft Brew.
Hey everyone, today I'll be talking to you about Rhythm Recipe, which is our new hazy IPA. With Rhythm Recipe we have gone with a technique called hop dipping, which is used for breweries that normally don't have a whirlpool, would do hop dipping, where they make a hop tea in the fermenter before putting the wort in before fermentation. I decided to do this process but do it at the end of fermentation. So we made a nice hop tea with Citra, Mosaic, and Simcoe. Some nice warm water, let that sit for an hour, and then we've put some finished fermented beer onto it, and that gives a nice dank, kind of grassy aroma to the beer. And then we dry hop that with Citra, Simcoe, and Mosaic again to create a nice tropical mix there. So it's a real kind of mix between dank and resiny and tropical fruits. So the beer pours a nice golden hazy color, nice thick soft mouthfeel, and then all the tropical fruits and dank and resinous flavors all kind of mixed together and comes out really smooth and drinkable, nicely balanced. Yeah, go get some.
That's what an expert sounds like. I tell you what, Sean. I tell you what, mate. You are good on camera, son. You're looking back there. You're muted, and I'm
going to stay muted for the next minute.
How many takes was that, Tim?
Less than Darren.
There was 2, but yeah, let's leave it at that.
Yeah, Matt Lander took 1. Let's say that. No, Sean, you did well there. It's a really interesting beer. The hop dipping technique, Andy, is that something you've ever used? Hop dipping?
It's not, no. And I remember chatting to Sean, and he bought me a sample from Tank of this beer and explained it to me. And it's really interesting as a method. I mean, it feels a little bit unnatural in a way. The way Sean described it, and you're pushing stuff into the FV, but yeah, it's interesting in terms of what it's pulled out. It's quite. I mean, the base beer is super soft again, and to use that word again, crushable.
Yeah.
I mean, you could drink a lot of this beer, but the hops are feel like they're kind of nicely rounded, and everything's kind of in the right place with this beer. You can pick everything out. It's got a gorgeous aroma. It drinks beautifully. Really like it.
Luke, what's your thoughts on this one?
Like, it's really surprising actually. It's a technique I'm aware of, but not something I've tried. And it's so intense, the aroma on this. It really, really jumps out the glass, and it's really quite pure to what the hops smell like as hops themselves as well. Like, it's really, like Sean said, it reminds me a little bit of when we're testing fresh hops or testing straight from the pellets as well. Yeah, it's really surprising. I think it's great.
So let me just put out, if you've got any questions, ask them now, because we will end soon. So if you want to know anything, ask them away. We have had a few comments. This is one of my favorites from Ollie. Who's your favorite Pokemon?
Hi, Ollie. I only know Pikachu. It's the only one I know. So let's go with that.
Sean, do you have a favorite Pokemon?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly what Andy said. It's the only one I know. Pikachu.
One you know?
Come on, guys. It's obviously Jigglypuff, right?
Oh, we do. So, Lager Year 2021 from Anakin. I agree with that. Year of the Lager.
I want 2021 to be the year of the pub garden. So, yeah, bring on the lager.
Yeah, amen. Amen. When do you reckon we're going to be back in pubs, Andy?
I really hope, late spring, early summer. At least, by then the weather's nicer, we can drink outside and be safe. And, yeah, fingers crossed, as soon as possible, please.
Yeah, amen. Sean, what's your... what do you think is going to be the beer fad for this year?
I don't know, but I think I met Anakin when I was in Norway, and she introduced or planted the seed of brewing Uncle Zesta again.
No way.
Yeah, I still can't guarantee it, but I'm still working on it. So maybe by the end of 2021.
I mean, Sean, you must know, and Anakin won't know, but Uncle Zesta is in barrels.
Yeah,
Nickname Great Uncle Zesta, so we could see some barrel-aged Uncle Zesta. Who knows?
Yeah, there's something I'm working on. Well, I'm attempting to work on.
Pubs must be what they are. Somewhere where we all met up and drank good beer. Here we go. Lovely mouthfeel. You can smell it from several feet away. I agree with that, and that is the hops. So, Luke, just to go back on hops, what are your favourite beers at the moment to drink? What are you absolutely loving?
To go for individual beers is a difficult one to say. I mean, like I said, I've drunk probably more, sold myself a Simcoe this week than I maybe should have done. It's really good. There's a few breweries that I've been super impressed by over the last kind of 6 months or so.
Yeah.
You've got Boxcar, are very local to me. They're making some really nice beers. The Beak down in Lewis as well, making some really, really exciting stuff as well.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my beers of last year was Oregon Trail from Andy as well. That was another one that it ticked so many boxes for me. But that's it. More proper classic West Coast IPAs. It's what absolutely got me in love with IPAs as a style. So I'd like to see more.
More West Coast IPA. Excellent. That's good.
Proper West Coast IPAs.
I think the scene is generally saying more big, hazy New England IPAs. But you are saying more West Coast IPAs. I love that. Sean, what do you want to see this year?
I think like I said, we're looking at playing around with our IPAs. I think we've got some fun ideas around brewing Cali IPAs, which is something we brewed first with Green Cheeks, and but I think like lagers, obviously, I think a lot of breweries have done because you've had the capacity, tank time to do them. So I think a lot of breweries are pushing out lagers, which is great. I think one thing we're doing, and I'm pretty sure other breweries are doing, is we've got time to brew some beers, put back into barrels. We've been releasing quite a lot of barrel beer, so we're putting some in. So I'm sure that's going to be a thing that comes out, but that'll probably be next year. I think everything's changing or growing so fast. There's lots of breweries. There's lots of great beer. Just get out and support the breweries, and
Amen.
try buy direct or from indie shops, and
Sean,
try different beers. That's
almost like
what I'd say.
with your mention of the barrel store. But this is our third release today, which we're not going to be tasting, but that is our third release today. Many Moons, which is a dark cherry sour, barrel aged, of course. And if you want to go to Instagram.com/Siren Barrels, or if you're on Instagram, just @Siren Barrels, go and follow our barrel store account. We are putting out a lot more barrel beers at the moment, and this is another absolute banger from the barrel store. So do go and check it out. Andy, what do you think is going to be the sort of fad release of this year?
Well, I did like Luke mentioned in West Coast IPA. I mean, that's the stuff that I love drinking, and we're a little plug. We're releasing next week a beer called Mission, which is a nod to Alpine's Nelson, with the bitterness ramped up a bit. So looking forward to getting that out there. I think I'm thinking of talks about the summer of pub gardens. Give me a nice pint of cask best bitter. In fact, give me 6 pints, or mild, or golden ale. Like, let's if this year is about connecting with friends or reconnecting with friends, sat in a pub garden, not really thinking about what's in your glass, but just drinking lots of it, then I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Sessionable beer with friends.
Andy, I'd drink a pint of Heineken if it meant I could drink in a pub. I'll be honest with you.
And some black IPAs.
Well, of course.
All right, guys, let's end it here. Unless, have you got any final thoughts or final comments? Sean, let's do it one by one.
Sorry, I was getting ready to cheers. Not just drink the beer, enjoy the beer, get on calls with friends, and keep in touch with friends at the moment while we're all in lockdown. And hopefully we'll come out of this soon.
Luke?
I mean, I've got to echo the same sentiment. Really, it's it's been not been the most fun 12 months for anyone at the moment, but yeah, little things like this have been keeping me sane. So I would suggest that everyone does likewise kind of reach out in whatever way you can do.
Yeah.
And share a beer.
Yeah. Andy?
I mean, it's been weird times, hasn't it? But I know a lot of people who sat at home wishing they were out with friends, and they're watching this, and I've done a lot of that in these past sort of few months, or almost a year now. Looking forward to getting out and supporting pubs, and keep on supporting independents and your local bottle shop. They need your trade more than ever right now. So any way you can support them, get out there and do that. And also want to say a big thank you from Elusive to Siren for the support you guys have given me this past year. It's meant an awful lot. And, I think back Tim and Jason and the guys over there helping me get our online shop up and running. And sorting out courier contracts, all that stuff, like little things that you guys do day in, day out, and made a big difference to us. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
No problem, Andy. That's what we do. We want to see everyone doing well and surviving and thriving in this current scenario. So yeah, everyone at home, keep buying from your local bottle shops. Keep supporting all your local businesses. If your local pubs are doing, cask fills or growler fills or whatever it is, go and buy it. Even if you don't need it or don't want it, just go and buy it, because they might not be there at the end of all this. So just keep supporting, keep buying beer, and thank you ever so much for joining us for this chat. It's been fun. So Sean, cheers, mate. Thank you. I'll see you. And I will see you soon, I'm sure. Luke, we get to have a chat in person sometime soon. Thank you everyone at home for watching in as well. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for Elusive and supporting absolutely everyone in the industry. It really does mean a lot. Cheers. Remember, you can go to sirencraftbrew.com to get the new beers. So we've got today Rhythm Recipe and Pastel Pills, and don't forget Many Moons, and of course everything is still available. Things like Sold My Soul, that's the other one. Sold My Soul Prosecco, and Zombies Ate My Neighbours. Cheers, guys.
We can do Sold My Soul to Zombies as a simple back at the air.
Cheers, everyone. You're all wonderful. Thank you for joining in. It's been great fun. We'll be back soon. We are turning 8 in March, and we're going to be back with some big plans. So keep an eye on that. Some of you will have answered our survey to get your name in a can, and we've got some big plans for that. So keep an eye. Cheers, guys. Thank you.